Guys, I thought about what things the Ranger, at least my Ranger, is missing. Some of the things I'm going to talk about are standard on some models. The high lifter, you may not need to have a mud machine, but a mud machine may translate into excellent property maintenance performance. So I want to talk about some of the things that I think that there's a huge overlap between customers, whether it be on four-wheelers or on side-by-sides. If they're mud people, if they're aggressive trail riders, and if they're doing property maintenance. For that customer, very commonly Ranger owners are doing, 50-60% utility, and then, the rest of it may be a mixture of recreational fun, as well as just people moving themselves from whether they're going to take their family out to dinner at the bar like last night. That's what we did. I drove my family to the bar and we went and got sandwiches and salad and whatever. Normal stuff. In the same way, you may have a property that you're working on, and you work within it, and then you leave it, and then you go recreate. And that is something that this machine has done extremely well for me. However, it does have a couple shortcomings that other models that have more of a upfront cost have. So I want to go over kind of the weaknesses of my Polaris Ranger. This is the premium model. It's obviously camouflage. I added the front rack to it. These are the Polaris doors with manual crank windows and manual locks. Absolutely love them. Matched with camo on the side. So really like it. It's a really nice package. It comes with this awesome front bumper that front support tied into, and that's a Polaris part, and it ties the roll cage with those two bolts, two on each side, down to the bumper, and it really strengthens up the front of the machine. You really actually notice when you're putting it together, when you tighten those down and you get the alignment right, the way it really ties the roll cage up into the bumper. It is pretty amazing how nicely that ties together. This came with these 26-inch tires on 12-inch wheels, and that's kind of a subject that we're going to broach here is talk about tires. We're going to talk about ground clearance, and we're going to talk about factory suspension setup and design. So I'm going to tell you right now, for 90% of customers who aren't trying to push either the mud or heavy off-roading, the way that this comes is going to entirely suit what you want to do. Though there are other customers somewhat like me. I didn't get the XP because I didn't think that the slight ground clearance gain and the arched A-arms themselves were going to bring me enough value. Do I wish I had that now? Yeah, maybe. But not at the expense of what I think is a more reliable long-term engine with better bottom end, which is the single overhead cam 1000. I really like this engine. For what I'm doing, which is reasonable riding with my family on trails at 50 miles an hour or less, going down the side of the road at 25 mile an hour, which is the legal speed, of course, and then getting through my property. This thing has the right amount of low range torque, the right amount of tractability, excellent performance. These tires have 1,500 miles on them. The whole machine now has 1,500 miles on it. And I was doing a little bit of thinking about what, I've used it for. I've basically exclusively used it for on-property work. So about, I'd say 200 miles are that of within my properties doing work within them. All the rest, so about 1,300 miles, are all hard trail riding or taking dirt roads or the side of roads to get to trails. So it's had a pretty hard life because basically either putzes around doing stuff like this, carrying chainsaws, moving wood out of the woods, things like that, or it's getting used on the trail. For those of you who are in the market for just such a machine, you may be looking at weighing, do I want the more trail-oriented machine or do I want the more work-oriented machine? I just want to cut in with a little bit of a thought here. Polaris and Can-Am. Can-Am is offering the normal 1000, whether it be for a work machine or whether it be a performance machine. Polaris breaks it down into a single overhead cam model or the XP, which has a dual overhead cam model. Dual overhead cam model has a good bit more horsepower and a little bit higher up in the RPM range torque curve. I like the torque curve of this engine. I really like this engine. But just because you want to opt for potentially the more long-term reliable engine and potentially the better torque engine, that alone doesn't mean that you don't want to have off-road capabilities. And I will say the XP doesn't really give you Can-Am. I'm going to, first of all, I'm not a Can-Am hater at all. They make really nice stuff. First of all, I'll tell you right now, the biggest reason I bought mine is because the doors on the Can-Am stick out way too far. I knew I wanted to have doors. I knew I wanted to have glass. I knew I wanted to have heat. I like how the Polaris doors stay flush with the side of the machine. The Can-Am stick out like two inches. I get that might offer them more sound deadening or whatever, but what I'm using my machine for in tight woods, which you can see the scratches down the side of it, it's seen some tight stuff. For me, this was the only way that I was going to go for this unit. Those of you who aren't trying to do deep property work, your buying choices may be a little bit different, where you can sway more toward the trail and the comfort aspect of things. I don't think that the XP offers still, even though I own, and I'm going to complain to you guys a little bit about ground clearance, arched A-arms, tire size. I don't think that the factory XP really gives you any justice in terms of, it's an upgrade. Off-road, ground clearance, A-arms, and a slightly bigger tire size. Still on, if I'm not mistaken, most of the models are 12-inch wheels. One of the problems with 12-inch wheel is some of your best higher performance, higher quality tires are going to be a minimum of 14-inch wheels. So I guess my concern is to be careful that you're not spending a whole ton money more in the XP to end up with similar, not enough ground clearance. The reason why I parked right here is that's just a chopped off stump. As you can see, if I were to traverse over top of that, I would definitely be scraping the underside of it. I scrape the underside of this thing all the time. It has, good ground clearance. But the thing is, as soon as you get into a trail atmosphere and as soon as you're off-roading or traversing your own property, I'm going to be getting a stump grinder in here. We're going to grind these things all the way down to the bottom. But until you do things like that, first of all, you got to make room for an excavator to come in here, or the stump grinder unit, or whatever way that you're going to stump grind, remove, or whatever the heck you're going to do, whether you're going to dig them out, grind them out, whatever. You got to get in here first. And to do that, you have to make the trails, which is exactly what we've done, is build trails big enough for, side-by-side to get through. And we've gotten through okay. I have a slow leak in the left front tire, which is driving me nuts. I have to air it up all the time. That is really common with less ply tires. Generally, 6 or 8 ply tires are what you want to get up into to prevent punctures. The stock tires that come in basically everything except what I've noticed, I'm going to compliment Can-Am, a lot of their vehicles come with these days, not only the suspension and wheel package that not only looks good but performs well, but also comes with the tires, the name brand tires or the higher end tires that are heavier. When you have, and the same thing I say whether it's on trucks or whatever, is the larger the tire, the more ply you have, so the heavier duty carcass, the heavier it is, the more performance gets sapped by the rotating mass of the tire. It's a downside. But when you're using it like this, you need to have that sidewall and carcass structure to protect from punctures. When you're working in a wooded environment, punctures are exceedingly common. I'm super happy that I got so many miles out of this, and I've kind of been able to make it work. There's a couple dings on the underside where the skid plating has hit and whatnot. There's just some improvements that could be done. And I could easily see why they build it like this. So I'm not necessarily complaining. And yes, I know my trail stickers are out of date. I'm going to do that here soon. So don't anybody comment. I know that they're out of date. I'm not necessarily complaining like they're doing something wrong. I'm all for the base model is existing, but I think that it should be easier on the Polaris side to get into factory 14-inch rims, to get into factory 28s or 30s like the Can-Am offers, and factory tires that are going to be more heavy duty. So I'm looking at doing a couple different things to this. I'm kind of curious what you guys think. This is my first time ever modifying a side-by-side. I'm thinking about getting some basically highway tires to put onto these 12s, because that's kind of all I can do, and getting a 14-inch set of wheels that have, and I realize that there's potentially better tires. I just really like the name and the way they look, and I wanted to have specifically nasty, muddier time of year tires. I want to get the Maxxis Carnivores for this in 28 by 9 for the front and 28 by 11 for the rear. I think it's going to look absolutely sick on this machine to have a really cool tire. And then I want to get a set of, I think they're going to be Sedona trail saws, I think, is what they're going to be. So kind of a more better hard pack snow tire, and then also good for just traversing a lot of distance, whether it's on blacktop or whatever, hard pack ground, and put those on these wheels. So we're going to do those couple things. I would like, and I think that the average person who owns property, I think that it's important to have more ground clearance than what this offers, and more ground clearance than the arched A-arms and the slightly higher stance that the XP offers. I don't think that they're going quite big enough for a lot of us. I'm all for having the lower slung option, but there needs to be a higher slung option, because no matter what you do, I think you're going to be bottoming out the XP2. Let me know if you guys have an XP and you're running in the same thing, because my theory is there's a huge aftermarket for this reason for the XP2. If the XP was high enough, we'd just be putting XP parts on a non-XP. Instead, whole aftermarket solutions exist for both lift kits and things like that. One of the things that I was looking at was getting a set of arched A-arms, which would get me new ball joints, brand new bushings, and all that good stuff, because obviously at 1,500 miles, things are squeaking a little bit. And if I'm not mistaken, we don't have any way to shoot lube into our grease, or we don't have grease points like you would have by an aftermarket higher quality A-arm. They've served their purpose. But like I said, I wanted to kind of make a video and point out a couple of the flaws. I wouldn't necessarily say flaws, but some things as a user that I've noticed. Bigger tires. And I like the idea, the same thing I kind of advocate in trucks too. If you can have a separate set of wheels and tires, one for, more highway use, and then one for more whether you're only a snow guy or whether you're off-roading too, having multiple sets of wheels and tires really opens up the door for you to have the best tire for the best situation, instead of having to make a compromise that isn't as good at either. So that's kind of what I'm looking at doing. I really like the look of these factory wheels. It's just I wish that they were 14s from the factory, because, well, number one, as you can clearly see, there's enough room to put more tire. Whoopsies, I wasn't even pointing where it needs to go. There's enough room to put more tire here. There's not a lot of tire going on this unit. The center of the hub is basically even with the bottom of the frame, and that implies that there just isn't very much tire on this thing. And like I said, I've gotten away with it so far, with a couple dings and getting hung up on things and having to pull winch cable a couple times because of getting hung up. There's a crack down there, right there, from me bottoming out on a stump when we were trail riding. That's definitely a little bit unfortunate. But there's enough room here to pack a bigger tire in here. And yes, there's going to be a downside to with the weight of the tire and the loss of ratio, basically, because you're not going to go change your diff ratios. These are kind of things that really should come from the factory. So I'm going to say the exact same thing that I say about trucks. Make sure when you buy your truck, especially a new vehicle, because you can't usually get a whole lot of aftermarket support for a brand new vehicle. Ford's case, I talk a lot about my Super Duty on my channel. You can't upgrade the axles. You can't get diffs. You can't change gear ratios from the aftermarket right now on 23 Plus, because it's all new axles. No one has aftermarket parts for these axles. So you need to get the right differential ratio the first time. And when you're paying this much for a vehicle, make sure you're getting a package that already suits what you want between the wheel diameter, the wheel style and appearance, potentially the factory tires that come on it. If you're an AT guy, at least get a truck that already has the all-terrain option fitted to it. Yeah, it's not as good as some of the aftermarket stuff, but it'll get you by when you're starting off, as opposed to needing the all-terrains, but buying the straight-up highway tires. The other thing is, too, a better set of tires would have better aftermarket, or second-hand value. Do you guys really think that a 26-inch set of tires that are just Carlisle's have really a very good, not that Carlisle's a bad tire, they make some decent stuff, and I'm not trying to knock them. It's just only a 26-inch tire. These things have basically zero value secondhand. As soon as you take these things off, you may as well, give them to someone, because the likelihood of you really getting any revenue out of these tires is basically nothing. If they gave you a better tire up front, even if it was the wrong tire for you, you could at least sell them, and put at least, $60 toward a new tire, $80 or something like that. Some residual value. I highly doubt these tires have almost any value to anyone, maybe $20. All 4 tires for $20 is probably the best you're gonna manage, at least in my area. Some areas might be different. Can-Am is doing a good job on this. Polaris, usually you always have to pay extra. And I see a lot of people running these things with no winches. You need to have a winch on an off-road vehicle, especially if you ride alone. And even if you ride in a group, you can still recover other people. They need to be standard. A lot of packages now are offering a standard winch you got to have a standard winch on these things. Of course, I had to buy that separate. Whereas some of the Can-Am products, like my new Can-Am four-wheeler, the package already came with a winch and a really nice set of tires that are already big enough in diameter, good ground clearance, arched A-arms. Can-Am has been doing this for a while. Polaris has not been doing it a super amount, or they haven't been doing it to the extent or to the... I just don't think the XP is enough, and that's why I didn't go with the XP up front. It was a pretty big step up in terms of cost to get a marginal increase in ground clearance and a marginal increase. No higher quality shock options. That's another thing Polaris just doesn't really, do. You basically never see, except for Razor, of course. Razors have top of line stuff, but in generals have pretty good stuff too. But the Ranger has just kind of been ignored. This is a really fun recreational vehicle, and it amazes me how there isn't a factory trail model. There isn't a factory, heavy-duty work, hunting model. A lot of us who own hunting land, we're constantly out in our woods trying to maintain our woods, and, these things are the bee's knees between the dump bed, the way they go places, and they turn super-duper well, very tight turning, so you don't need to have a huge amount of land modified to get it back here. They're really awesome. You couldn't get a pickup truck, and turn it around. Like this area, I can turn around this thing easily here. You would be bulldozing over stuff to turn a pickup truck around in here. So, and of course, the width is skinnier. There's a lot of advantages, and pickup trucks don't have dump beds. So there's just so many great things about a side-by-side. And I think that, as someone who really likes Polaris products, I really like their front diff. The Visco Lock 4 that Can-Am came out with is a huge upgrade from the regular Visco Lock. The Visco Lock kind of sucked. Polaris was absolutely murdering it in terms of performance, Visco Lock versus the on-demand four-wheel drive that Polaris calls their automatic locking front differential. It is so smooth. It is so fast. It is just better. So it's a lot of the reason why I bought this unit is because you couldn't get at the time a Defender with a Visco 4 lock unless you got the Mud model. And like I said, there's honestly a lot of overlap between what the Mud guys are doing and what the property work people are doing, in my opinion. Bigger tires, more ground clearance, arched A-arms, better quality suspension, more flex, heavy-duty tires. I don't know if I said that. There's a lot of overlap. Like basically and it never hurts to have your air intake cleaner. Snorkels, I have to clean my air. You can see that they got mud on the sides of them. I have a lot of air filter maintenance that I do on this to clean and keep this thing clean. There's a lot of advantages to having a mud machine, in my opinion, versus a non-mud machine, especially for a property owner. So I want to make sure that, if I was to do this again, I probably would have the same unit, and I'd go into it knowing that I would eventually want to do wheels, tires, A-arms, shocks, and I do the exact same thing where I got a good amount of time out of it before I put a bunch of money into it. I will say that you can go out and buy a Defender or a Commander that is already really hotsy-tootsie from the factory. The Generals are the same way now. When they first came out, they were a little bit, not quite as upgraded. The Generals are pretty hot units right now in terms of having good suspension, good clearances, a lot of ground clearance. There is too much, though. I want to really quickly caution, I just see this a lot with Razors especially. They come from the factory really, really drooped out. Their ride height, the A-arms are pointed at the ground. That impacts tie rod durability, ball joint durability, your axle shaft durability. All that stuff is impacted by how much droop you have. As you can see, we're sitting at ride height with almost flat CV angles. That's a really good thing. And it means that the ball joints, the steering system, and the drive system is going to be very reliable at this ride height. So it begs arched A-arms, bigger tires. Boom. You get a slight loss of a raise of your center of mass when you go up a little bit. You keep your mostly stock or mostly flat A-arm and drive shaft angles, which is very good. You keep your flat ball joints, which is good for their strength, and you just get about an inch more if you go to 28s, which should fit on this, which is what I'd like to do with the Carnivores, go to 28s. The biggest I can get with more of a reasonable 12-inch to put on these wheels, because I hate to toss them. They're such good wheels, or good-looking wheels. They work fine. You can't get, for instance, Carnivores, and you can't get many different high-quality tires in a 12-inch wheel. The Sedona Rip or Trail Saw, or whatever the heck it is, The biggest they go is 27 for a 12. So 27 is only a 1-inch gain. It's only a ½ inch bigger around. Yeah, it's going to be just fine for doing highway stuff, but it's not really going to actually gain me anything off-road. So a concern definitely there. So one other thing too is it's 60 degrees today. I'll admit I get hotter than a lot of other people do. I just always have been someone who runs hot. I have no problem working when it's, 35, 40 degrees out. Don't really get that cold that easy. But man, when it's 90 plus degrees here in Michigan, the humidity is really high. Man, do I get hot. And I still keep working. A lot of this trail work was done in 90 degree plus air, really high humidity. I wish I would have, and when I ordered this during COVID, there were, at least at the dealership that I got it from, there were no more allocations for the North Star. Why do you have to buy a specific model to get AC? That is my question. If we can put heat into anything, and I'll tell you why, is because you have to have an AC condenser, which is a different accessory drive setup, and I'm pretty sure then it has a normal alternator instead of a stator. Some things that are changing as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of you guys probably know more than me about the engine aspect, but there's a big difference between the AC model and the non-AC model, and there's a lot of cost to it. But looking back on it, I really wouldn't mind having AC in this unit for what I use it for. So keep that in mind. Any of you guys who are debating this, to get it up, if something happened to this machine and I got a new one, I would for sure 100% buy an AC model. That is by far the hardest thing to change. It's fairly easy to change coilovers to get a lift out of the coilover and get a higher quality coilover. You can get those from several different locations. Really high quality arched A-arms, again, with better ball joints, not hard to get. Wheels and tires, not hard to order. You order those online. All that stuff is super easy compared to putting AC in it, which is not. Putting a winch in it, super easy. So if you're going into the buying process, hopefully I gave you a little bit of a well-rounded background in terms of what I would do now at 1,500 miles. I've had it now since 2022, so 3 years. We're coming up on the actual 3-year mark. I think I got it in June, I want to say, of 22. I ordered it about, March-ish, I think is when I ordered it, March, April, and it came in June. So very happy that I did. The amount of work that I've gotten done in this, the increase in property value, if you want me to try and justify this for you, I've increased my property's value because of using this tool more than the value of the product for sure. That is a guarantee. You can't take something inaccessible and make it accessible because of the use of your tools. And this trail goes back there, except for a bunch of trees fell here. I haven't cleaned this up yet. This tool has hugely increased the value of my properties and has made my life easier. It's allowed me to enjoy sitting with my family more with 3 seats. Having a 3-seat machine when you got a kid, and yes, I know it's dirty. We were just at the beach with it. The dogs got sand everywhere. My daughter, and we can bring the dogs in here with us. Obviously, you guys may be considering a 4-door. Now that we have 4 dogs, a 4-door is definitely a concern. And for that reason, too, it got me thinking about, man, you really, to take a 4-door and to do similar things that I'm doing with this, you need even more ground clearance. You need even more tire because of how long they are between the front and the rear wheels. If you go and double the distance between the front and the rear wheels with these teeny weeny little tires, you're going to get hung up on a lot of stuff. You're going to really drag the undercarriage. You're going to be really hard on your skid plating. So I think I hope that answers some questions, kind of gives you an idea of some cons that I've noticed of owning this, even though I have very much raving review if you want. I love this machine. It has just given me so much happiness in terms of the ability to hang out with my family and my dogs, trail riding with my friends and family. It has been, my dad and I have even spent some time in here, and any time that I have to spend with my dad is worth its weight in gold. So very good things to say, but there's just a couple of things that need to be improved, and I think Can-Am's kind of leading the way and pushing Polaris into a lot of these things of maximum ground clearance, high quality arms, better quality suspension, bigger factory tires, potentially bigger wheels so that you can put the better aftermarket tires on it. A lot of good things are kind of being pushed by Can-Am in the off-road market. But in the same way, Polaris pushed Can-Am to come out with a better front diff, which they did. This front diff is absolutely incredible. This thing is an animal off-road. It is so good because of the way that front diff seamlessly locks, and there's like no spin of the front end before the front end locks. It is such a good design. And again, I think Commanders and Generals all have unlocking rear differentials. If you're going above that into X3s and Razors, they tear the hell out of the ground. They tear the hell out of your yard. So one of the big advantages is if you can cover some bases with this kind of unit that has an unlocking rear differential, an open rear diff, and then it locks manually, it saves your yard so much. I can't even tell you how bad an X3 will tear the heck out of your yard, not only with its power, but in terms of turning the thing and the tires that they come with. And Razors the same way. With a locked rear end, these things, you think about something that weighs 4 times as much as like a sport quad, or 5 times, even 6 times as much as like a 250 Honda or a Raptor or a 450, any of those 450 class machines. They have a solid rear bar that is your drive shaft, and they tear up the ground when you turn, and they weigh 400 pounds plus a rider. So they're, not super heavy. You get into a 4-seat one of these things, tipping, closer to 3,000 pounds, with the people in it, you tear things up if you got a 4-seat. So there's a lot of advantages sport-wise to running a Ranger or a Defender in a sport segment, because you can then use it back in here. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully the video makes sense. I enjoyed making it for you. I enjoyed talking with you guys. If you have any questions in regards to the ownership of a Ranger, let me know. I would be more than happy to dive into it. I've helped many people research their concerns. If I didn't know the answer to their concerns, I've looked into it too, to make sure that I found a source that was a good source to then give them good advice. Feel free to comment any questions you have. Take care, everyone. I enjoy all of you. Whew, I am bushed. I just made a whole new section trail with the Milwaukee Hatchet, which is pretty darn cool to basically make a trail that I think the side-by-side is going to fit down with one battery, and I still have 2 bars left, with an electric chainsaw. That's pretty cool. So we're going to go see right now if the Polaris fits through said trail, or if we have to make it wider. We're going to find out. Could have cleaned up this down tree that I cut up, but we're just going to drive right over top of it, because that's what the Polaris does. Now we're going to have to make a little bit of a fore and back here, because I don't have it quite as clear as I'd like to have right that spot, because there's a tree in the way, and I'm not sure I want to get rid of that tree. So we're going to see what happens. Now, we want to avoid any kind of major, damage. I'm not trying to break it. But on the same token, I kind of like to see if it fits. Now, as you can see, we have so many down trees from this storm, plus this property had a lot of down trees in the first place. Oh, yeah. Probably could have gone just a little bit taller on that tree. I guess I didn't notice that. So what we're going to do really quick, just because we have the saw here, let's fix that real quick, just because it's not good enough. All right, we are vastly improved now. All right, we're obviously going to make this trail wider as we go, but this is the first cut, and it can only get better from here. So the biggest thing I wanted to accomplish here is a turnaround where I didn't have to go back and forth 100 times. Not really 100 times, it's more like once. We're going to go back through the other way and see where we're at. This is where we watch for that tree so I don't back into it. Alright. What in the world is behind me? Junk? Oh yeah, because the trail's right there, dummy. All just some downed wood that I cut that got in the way. That's going to go back with me in the back of the side-by-side. Well, I would say, you guys, the Milwaukee hatchet has definitely earned my respect, because this is a decent amount of effort that went into this, and it still has enough battery to go back and cut something else. And my experience so far is 2 bars is still a pretty substantial amount of cut time. So I am pretty darn jazzed about that. We're going to avoid that hole in the ground. I don't even know how that got there. I'm assuming this was clear cut back in the day, even though we didn't really avoid it that well. We're going to wheel through here, and then we're going to back up here because we don't have everything perfectly cleared here. But I'd say that's a pretty nice step. Now, it wouldn't kill me to bring some of that wood up, which is what I very well might do really quick, is load the back of the machine up with some of this perfectly good firewood. But in the meantime, we'll bomb over it. Oh, what a beast. All right. I'm going to load up the wood, and we're going to talk to you guys later. This isn't cleared by any means, but it's moved in such a way that I think I can squeeze through here. I like being able to use my trails again. That storm was a mess.